To create a reverse lookup zone, I'm just going to pull up DNS. So I'm going to click on Tools, and I'm going to click on DNS. Take just a moment for that to open. I'm going to double click this reverse lookup zones. Notice by default, you do not have a reverse lookup zone. You do have a forward lookup zone by default. When Active Directory is installed, it automatically creates forward lookup zones for you. It does not create a reverse lookup zone. So what I'm going to do is create a reverse lookup. To do that, I'm just going to right click New Zone. Very similar to the forward lookup zone. So if I say Next here, it gives me the zone types. Everything that we covered about the primary zone when we talked about the forward lookup zone is true here. It's a read and write copy of a zone, so you can add records, delete records. A secondary is a read-only copy of a primary zone. Just like the forward lookup, it's just resolving an IP address to a name instead of name to IP. Stub zone is also the same. Active Directory Integrated is also an option because I'm on a domain controller. And I'm actually going to choose Active Directory Integrated. So I'm going to click Next for that. Just like the forward lookup, it says who should this replicate to? All DNS servers in this domain or all DNS servers in the forest if they reside on domain controllers, because again, this is Active Directory Integrated. Or the Windows 2000 compatibility. No chance we're having a Windows 2000 DNS server, so not a valid option anymore. Well, I'm going to click Next for that. Just leave it on the default. All DNS servers in the domain. Am I creating this reverse lookup for IP version 4 or 6? IP version 6 is increasing in popularity, but IP version 4 is still the standard. So I'm going to click IPv4 and Next. Now it asks for the network ID. My network ID I'm using here is 172.16.0. So I'm going to key that in. I'm going to click Next for that. Dynamic updates, exactly the same as the forward lookup. Do not allow. Allow secure only if you're Active Directory integrated, or allow both non-secure and secure. I'm going to stay with the recommended default, secure only updates. Next, and finish. Notice the reverse lookup zone, the name looks very odd. A reverse lookup zone is actually your network ID reversed. So the name of this zone is actually 0.16.172.n- address.ADDR.ARPA. It's always your network ID reversed. Always will be the name of the zone. Where the forward lookup went name to IP, this goes IP to name. Well, if I open this zone, I'm going to right click. Instead of new host, you create a new pointer record. A pointer record is the same as a host record, serves the same purpose, but it's IP to name instead of name to IP. So that's the common record you always have in a reverse lookup zone. Well, I'm going to click New Pointer. Now it says, well, what's the address for this? I'm going to say, now it says, what's the address? I'm actually going to click Browse for host name. And I'm going to browse RTS DC1 forward lookup. I'm going to go to this rts.local zone I created earlier, and I'm going to click on the sales PC record, which has an address that ends in 100. Well, I'm going to click that and OK. And you can see what it did. It automatically pulled that IP address, the 100, and automatically associated it with the host name, sales PC01. So I'm going to click OK for that. Now, if I click on the reverse lookup zone, you can see that it has the IP address 172.16.0.100 resolves to the name sales PC 01. If I click on RTS local and forward, you'll see it's name to IP. Many security appliances require a reverse lookup zone. Basically, they kind of use it as like a double check. So if I connect to something, say on the internet, many security tools will say, well, I want to know what IP address does this name resolve to? So it says, oh, that name, sales PC, resolves to that address. To make sure it's not been spoofed, it'll then say, well, I want to know for that address you told me, 172.16.0.100, I want you to tell me what address does that name resolve back to? So it says, oh, well, that address resolves to the same name. If this was spoofed, then they would likely resolve to different names, and many security appliances would reject your connection. So it's like an added measure of security. But again, you do not have a reverse lookup zone by default. You don't even have to create one if you don't want one. But many security tools and appliances either recommend or require a reverse lookup zone. If you have a reverse lookup, anytime a host A record gets created, if I just go to my forward lookup, new host, notice at the bottom it says create associated pointer record. So if I manually created a record here, it would automatically create the host. Now, ideally, we won't be doing that. Ideally, on both of these zones, the forward and reverse, if I right click this and go to properties, ideally, they will be Active Directory integrated and they will use secure only dynamic updates. So they automatically create their own types of records. So in summary, the zone is nothing but a folder that contains all your records, but the type of zone you pick means it has different characteristics of how records move around, how they transfer or replicate. So we have the 4 zone types: Active Directory integrated, primary, secondary, and stub.